Picture this, the year is 882 AD. Europe is still figuring out this whole feudalism thing. Meanwhile, a group of Vikings led by a guy named Oleg decide to set up shop in Eastern Europe. They weren't there for the weather, trust me. These Vikings, known as the Rus, weren't just about raiding and pillaging, though they did their fair share of that. They were also traders, connecting the Byzantine Empire with the Baltic Sea. This strategic location, along with some savvy alliances and a healthy dose of Viking ambition, led to the rise of Kievan Rus. This loose federation of Slavic and Finnish tribes, centered around the city of Kiev, became a major power player in Eastern Europe. They adopted Orthodox Christianity, built magnificent churches, and even developed their own legal code. Kievan Rus was a melting pot of cultures, a vibrant mix of East and West. They laid the foundation for what would become Russia, a nation with a complex and fascinating history. But like a supernova, their time was limited. Stay tuned for the dramatic entrance of some unexpected guests from the East. You know what they say? When in doubt, blame the Mongols. Just when things were getting cozy in Kievan Rus, along came the Mongols. Imagine a horde of warriors on horseback, sweeping across the steppes like a conquering tidal wave. That was the Mongol Empire under Genghis Khan, and they weren't known for their gentle diplomacy. In the 13th century, the Mongols, led by Batu Khan, grandson of the great Genghis, decided to pay Kievan Rus a visit. Let's just say it wasn't a friendly one. The Mongols conquered the region, burning cities and leaving a trail of, well, let's just say they weren't known for their environmental consciousness. This period, known as the Mongol Yoke, lasted for over 2 centuries and had a profound impact on Russia. It isolated them from Western Europe, stifled their cultural development, and forced them to pay hefty tributes to their Mongol overlords. But like a phoenix rising from the ashes, a new power would emerge from the embers of Mongol rule. Stay tuned for the rise of the Tsars. After centuries under the Mongol thumb, the Russians were ready for a comeback. And who better to lead the charge than a bunch of ambitious princes who decided to call themselves Tsars? Imagine the crown-making ceremony. Does this hat make my head look big? The rise of the Tsardom, centered in Moscow, was a gradual but determined climb to power. These Tsars, starting with Ivan the Great, weren't messing around. They consolidated their power, expanded their territory, and finally kicked the Mongols out for good. They were like the ultimate landlords, reclaiming their property after a very long, very unwelcome house party. This era saw the birth of a powerful and centralized Russian state, one that would go on to play a major role in European and world affairs. But it wasn't all sunshine and vodka shots. The road to absolute power is paved with, well, let's just say it wasn't a walk in the park. If there was ever a ruler who lived up to his nickname, it was Ivan IV, better known as Ivan the Terrible. Talk about bad PR. This Tsar was known for his ruthless ambition, his paranoia, and his, shall we say, unconventional methods of dealing with his enemies. Ivan's reign was a time of both great expansion and great terror. He conquered new territories, modernized the army, and established a system of centralized rule. But he also unleashed a reign of terror against his own people, executing anyone he perceived as a threat, real or imagined. Let's just say he wasn't winning any popularity contests. Ivan's legacy is a complex one, a mix of brilliance and brutality. He transformed Russia into a major European power, but at a terrible human cost. He set the stage for the Romanov dynasty, but he also left a legacy of autocracy and fear that would haunt Russia for centuries to come. Section 5, Peter the Great, bringing Russia out of the Dark Ages and into some new ones. If Ivan the Terrible was the Tsar who scared Russia into shape, Peter the Great was the one who tried to drag it, kicking and screaming, into the modern world. Imagine a Tsar who travels incognito to Western Europe, learns about shipbuilding, and then comes back home determined to turn his medieval kingdom into a maritime superpower. Peter's reign was a time of radical reforms. He modernized the army, built a new capital city, St. Petersburg, and forced his reluctant subjects to shave their beards and wear Western clothing. He was like the ultimate makeover artist, but instead of a smoky eye, he gave Russia a navy and a window to Europe. Peter's reforms transformed Russia, bringing it closer to the West and laying the foundation for its emergence as a great power. But his methods were often brutal, and his reforms came at a high price for many ordinary Russians. He may have given Russia a new look, but he also created new problems that would plague the country for years to come. Section 6. Catherine the Great, Empress, reformer, art collector, and you know the rest. Catherine the Great, a German princess who married into the Romanov dynasty, proved that behind every great man is a woman who can seize power for herself. She was a shrewd politician, a patron of the arts, and a woman who knew how to get what she wanted. Catherine's reign was a golden age for the Russian aristocracy. She expanded Russia's borders, reformed the legal system, and promoted education and culture. She corresponded with Voltaire, collected art like it was going out of style, and generally ruled with a combination of wit, charm, and ruthless pragmatism. But Catherine's reign was also marked by peasant uprisings and the continued exploitation of the serfs. Her legacy is a complex one, a mix of Enlightenment ideals and autocratic realities. She may have been a friend of philosophers, but she was also a Tsarina who knew how to keep her grip on power. Section 7. Rasputin, Revolution, and the Fall of the Romanovs. It was a wild time. The 20th century did not start well for Russia. Imagine a country on the brink of modernization, still grappling with social inequality and political instability, and then throw in a world war, a mystical advisor with a suspicious beard, and a revolution that topples the monarchy. It's enough to make you reach for the vodka. The reign of Nicholas II, the last Tsar of Russia, was a recipe for disaster. He was a weak and indecisive ruler, ill-equipped to deal with the challenges of a rapidly changing world. Add to that the influence of Rasputin, a self-proclaimed holy man with a penchant for dark magic and political meddling, and you've got a recipe for revolution. The Russian Revolution of 1917 swept away the Romanov dynasty, ending centuries of Tsarist rule. It was a time of chaos, violence, and upheaval, but it also paved the way for the rise of a new and even more radical regime, the Soviet Union. Section 8. The Hammer and Sickle. The Soviet Union takes center stage. From the ashes of the Russian Empire rose the Soviet Union, a communist state unlike any the world had ever seen. Imagine a country where workers controlled the means of production, where private property was abolished, and where the red flag flew high above the Kremlin. The early years of the Soviet Union were a time of both hope and terror. Lenin, the leader of the Bolshevik Revolution, promised a workers' paradise, but his rule was marked by civil war, famine, and political repression. After his death, Joseph Stalin, a ruthless dictator, seized power, unleashing a reign of terror that would claim millions of lives. The Soviet Union under Stalin was a totalitarian state where dissent was crushed and individuality was suppressed. But it was also a time of rapid industrialization, scientific advancement, and military might. The Soviet Union played a pivotal role in defeating Nazi Germany in World War II, emerging as a superpower that would challenge the United States for global dominance. Section 9. From Sputnik to Perestroika, Russia in the Modern World. The latter half of the 20th century saw the Soviet Union locked in a Cold War with the West, a battle of ideologies and military might that played out on a global stage. Imagine a world on the brink of nuclear annihilation, where spies lurked in the shadows and the space race captured the imagination of a generation. From launching Sputnik, the first artificial satellite, to sending Yuri Gagarin into space, the Soviet Union achieved remarkable feats of scientific and technological prowess. But behind the facade of progress, the Soviet system was crumbling from within, burdened by economic stagnation, political repression, and a growing sense of disillusionment. Under the leadership of Mikhail Gorbachev, the Soviet Union embarked on a path of reform known as perestroika and glasnost. But these reforms, intended to save the Soviet system, ultimately hastened its demise. In 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved, ending the Cold War and ushering in a new era for Russia and the world.